Hi, everyone. Welcome back. This is Teresa with Monarch Integrative Coaching. In my last video, I shared about the two aspects of chronic illness and chronic pain conditions. And one of them is the global high activation in the nervous system, and the other is the fear cycle of the symptoms themselves, which I will address in another video. But in that last video, I talked about a few ways to address the global high activation aspect by bringing in cues of safety. Now, the more our nervous system recognizes safety, the more it releases that high activation and the more capacity we have to function well in our lives. It's that high activation in our nervous system that causes our brain to kind of misfire and causes our brain to focus on all of the potential danger signals or threats. And so our brain gets into this hypersensitive place and it tends to tag things in our environment and inside our body as dangerous and unsafe. So when we can address this global high activation aspect, it really helps calm the brain and the nervous system down and decreases the amount of mistakes the brain can make, so to speak. So one of the tools I shared in that video was the Safe and Sound Protocol, or as it's known, the SSP. Now, this is a passive listening system that was developed by Dr. Stephen Porges, who is the person who developed the polyvagal theory. This system is designed to reorient your nervous system to cues of safety through the middle ear. I wanted to share my experience with the program and why I now offer it to my clients as a tool to support better overall nervous system regulation. So I'm going to kind of share my story, what it was like for me when I did this program about, I'm trying to think of when it was. I guess it was back in last November. So when I did the program, I had no idea what to expect, and I was actually a little apprehensive about it, but I dove in anyway because I'd heard good things about it. So I did it over about 2.5 months. And what I noticed at first was actually pretty subtle. The listening portion was really easy. I just listened to 20 or 30 minutes of classical music at each session, and then I went about my day. Usually I felt pretty relaxed during the listening sessions, but towards the later hours, probably hours 3, 4, and 5 of the listening, because there's 5 different hours that you listen to separately. And towards those last hours, I did notice my nervous system feeling more mobilized, but not in a way that felt threatening. So I just felt like more energy in my body. And so after I would listen, I would feel this urge to move. And I would get in my car and I would drive to the store and I'd walk around pushing a buggy for about a half hour or so. And then I would feel great, and even when I was walking around pushing the buggy, I didn't feel anxious, or I just felt like I wanted to move. It felt good to just like mobilize and move and move that energy out. So that was one of the first things I noticed. And then I didn't really notice the deeper changes until a few weeks after I'd finished the SSP. The first awareness that I kind of picked up on was just a more settled feeling overall in my body. I would enjoy just sitting in the quiet and generally felt more capacity to be with whatever was there. Now, there was another thing that I noticed that was really interesting, and I didn't pick up on it until a couple of months later. So I noticed that I hadn't had to get my neck adjusted in about 2 or 3 months, which for me was like unheard of. I had been going to see my upper cervical chiropractor every 3 weeks for over 2 years. And for whatever reason, I just was not holding my adjustments for longer than that. So every time I'd come out of of alignment, I'd get these very specific symptoms that made me very nervous. And so I would anxiously call for, the same day appointment with my chiropractor, hoping they had a cancellation. So that was a really interesting correlation I made. And now it's been about 9 months and I still haven't had to get an adjustment. And you may ask, why I think this is connected to the SSP. And the reason why I think that it is because if anyone's ever read Stanley Rosenberg's book called Accessing the Healing Power of the Vagus Nerve, he talks about the connection between the upper cervical vertebrae and our nervous system states. Those vertebrae will actually move out of place when we've lost connection to the ventral vagal state or the social engagement state. Many people have heard of his basic exercise. So the basic exercise is this, like if you've ever done this, you put your hands behind your head like this, you kind of hold your arms out, and then you move your eyes up and to the right. And you hold it until you feel a natural sigh, or you feel the urge to swallow, or you yawn. And then you come back to center, and then you do the other side. And you hold that until, you feel the same urges. And you're supposed to keep your head very, very straight. So anyway, that's his basic exercise. And what's interesting is, so I'm going to read you what he writes as the goal of the basic exercise. So he says, the goal of this exercise is to enhance social engagement. It repositions the atlas, which is your C1 vertebrae, and the axis, which is your C2 vertebrae, and increases mobility in the neck and the entire spine. It increases blood flow to the brainstem, where the five cranial nerves necessary for social engagement originate. So this can have a profound effect on the ventral branch of the vagus nerve, which is cranial nerve number 10, as well as on cranial nerves number 5, 7, 9, and 11. So very interesting. If you're interested in anything vagus nerve related, I would recommend that book a lot. So after I completed the SSP and suddenly, I had no more misalignments, I was kind of shocked. And I have to say, I absolutely love my chiropractor. And I miss him because he was the only physical human contact I got. And he was always using like this amazing massager on my neck and back. And he was just awesome. So if anyone needs a good chiropractor based in Utah, go see Dr. Jeff Forrest at Utah Upper Cervical Chiropractic. He is truly the best. And he's super intuitive, and he just knows. He can palpate your back and know exactly where you need support without even having to tell him. So anyway, I needed my initial adjustments, and I think Upper Cervical Chiropractic is incredible work, and it did so much for me. However, I should have been holding my adjustments after 2 years of support. So there was something preventing me from doing that. And once I finished the SSP, that missing piece came into place. I did another round of the SSP over the summer. And once again, I noticed some subtle but profound shifts. So I felt another level of stabilization and just started noticing that things that used to really activate or bother me didn't bother me anymore. So annoying stuff that people did all the time that used to send me into a rage became much easier to just accept and move on from. I also have an easier time staying in my own business, and as a codependent, that's a big deal. And tolerating the discomfort of things I can't control. So yeah, I think a lot of people with chronic illness and chronic pain patterns have a nervous system that gets stuck in survival states. It can be hard to come out of those states when our brain and nervous system are preoccupied with scanning for danger signals. The SSP helps to train your nervous system via your middle ear muscles to start scanning for cues of safety. I've heard it described as lubrication for the nervous system. I was thinking about this the other day, and I'm wondering, like, have you ever watched two people communicating where almost everything one person says, the other person interprets in a negative way, even if it wasn't intended that way? I think it's kind of a fascinating thing to watch the interplay of people's interactions. So when we're hypervigilant, our ear muscles are attuned to cues of threat, and sometimes they can miss out on picking up the cues of safety. This can lead us to hearing negative cues over positive cues, which can make us reactive and always perceiving what isn't okay and totally missing the cues of safety. So the SSP is designed to train your ears to reach for those middle frequencies of safety that are connected to the human voice, which helps us to re-engage with our social engagement system, or the ventral vagal state. This state is our safety state of the parasympathetic nervous system. So if you've heard people talking about how you want to be in parasympathetic and that rest and digest to be in healing mode, that is what the Safe and Sound protocol helps us do. And that helps direct us to that state in our nervous system. The SSP is a great tool to support nervous system regulation, which helps to bring down that global high activation. And the more we dial that down, the less hypersensitive the brain will be, which means it's less likely to turn on symptoms in its attempt to protect you. Now, unfortunately, you can't just buy the SSP and listen to it. You are required to go through a provider who can guide you through what's the most appropriate pacing for you. And when after I did the SSP, I loved it so much that I became a trained provider, and I will be running several safe and sound protocol listening groups starting this September. So they're going to start in mid-September. The groups are an awesome way to do the SSP. One of the reasons the SSP is only delivered through a provider is because they recommend doing it with co-regulation. The groups are connected enough to feel that sense of support from others, and they also offer education, regulation tools, and structure. I also offer a nervous system 101 class before we begin the listening sessions, and then we meet twice a week until we make it through each of the phases of listening. I have one program for highly sensitive listening, which will go for about 10 weeks, and I have two programs for standard listening, which will go for about 5 weeks. Now, I'll be sharing another video about which program might be most appropriate for each person, so stay tuned for that. If you have any questions about my SSP groups, you can send me an email or you can book a free discovery call through my website, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have. I also offer private delivery of the Safe and Sound protocol if that's more your jam. So reach out if you're curious about that option as well. One of the best parts of the SSP is that it's passive. You don't have to work hard to get results. All you have to do is show up, stay curious, and trust the process. All right. I'd love to hear from you. If you found this information helpful, please subscribe if you haven't, so I know you're out there, and share any videos that you feel might be helpful to other people. All right. I'm wishing you all a kind and gentle day and continued healing one step at a time.